Uh, First of all, thanks to everybody for coming out. We certainly didn't plan for this kind of weather when we established this evening for a panel discussion related to the series that we did on Latino issues in our community, in our state, our region, and indeed in our nation. But thank you all for coming. You're the hardy spirits, and you're very welcome. We appreciate you being here. My name is Bill Barth. I'm the editor of the Beloit Daily News. I'm going to act as the moderator this evening for our panel. This discussion is being filmed by Cable Access TV, and the cameras are all pointed this way, so as far as the people at home will know, there's thousands of you out there in the audience. We did that for a reason, as our Beloit Daily News folks are here tonight too and covering the event. This is a sensitive topic in our community and in our nation, and we wanted to make sure that cameras are pointed this way for the safety and security of our audience in case we had some people here who might have reason to be fearful. So no pictures of the audience are going to be published anywhere, including on the cable access. On behalf of the panelists and Beloit Daily News, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Father John, who did kind of blow it with the only job he had, which was to make sure the weather was okay. And I know you did your best, Father, but say a few Hail Marys, we'll let it go. St. Thomas Apostle Catholic Church is a beautiful forum for this. We're glad to be able to use it tonight. I want to talk just a little bit about the series that we did, week-long series. We got this idea and started talking about it 6 to 8 months ago, I suppose, and thought that as we went around town, we saw more and more and more Latino businesses and Latinos in the schools and the presence in our community. And yet it was sort of in the shadows and not being brought out. The story wasn't being told. So we made a decision that we were going to try to do a team project, report it very deeply, work our way into the community. In order to do that, we had to ask for some help because we didn't have any street credibility in the Latino community. And so we had to find some folks who did. Reverend Nettie Astudillo was very instrumental, as were others. Our overriding theme was to be non-judgmental and just try to introduce Beloit to itself. Beloit has various segments of the community. Right now they don't mix nearly as much as they might. They don't know each other. That was our purpose. I hope that we accomplished that. Tonight what we wanted to do was get together and just talk about some of the issues that are in our community. I wanted to introduce some of the members of our team. A lot of you who may have read the articles know the names but not the faces. The young lady banging away pictures here is Hillary Gavin, and Sean Zink. Clint Wolf, our news editor, is hiding in the back. Kent Hyman, publisher's around here somewhere. Kent? I already had this conversation with one person who wanted to be, how can they see these? They are on our website. All the articles that we've done are there in Spanish and English. You'll find a little logo that says Comunidad, which was the tag of the series. If you click there, it will take you through to a page either in English or Spanish so you can read all the articles. I want to just preface this before we get into the discussion a little bit with what's been going on, what some of the things that we found in Beloit today. Nearly 1 in 5 residents self-identifies as Latino. That statistic comes from the 2010 census. We're nearly 5 years down the road from there. Odds are it's considerably more than that now. Certainly hasn't gone down. In Beloit School District, it's closer to 1 in 3. Some school districts it's higher than that. I believe it's Hackett School, it's nearly 1 in 5, or nearly 50%, nearly 1 in 2. By 2014, Latinos had become Wisconsin's largest minority population. And Beloit has a larger Latino population than all but a couple of cities in Wisconsin. According to the Pew Research Center, about 85,000 Latinos live in Wisconsin without documentation. About 55,000 of those people are involved every day in our workforce. Nationally, American public opinion is mixed on what to do about this, and we've all been, that wasn't done by design, but it was timely because immigration has been the number one debate for the past week since President Obama's executive order. Regionally, though, and in Wisconsin, we can't impact very much what goes on in Washington, so we have to try to deal with it and deal with the people who live here, all the people. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I want to introduce the panel. First, I'll say that Congressman Mark Pocan, Democrat from Madison, who was supposed to be here tonight, just reelected to his second term. Waited until about 4:30, but Mark let me know that the roads were too bad, and indeed they were. So I understand why he's not here tonight, but I didn't let him completely off the hook. I asked Mark, told him that we sure would appreciate it if he would bang out a statement that we could read tonight from the Washington perspective and how our congressman for the 2nd District feels about what's going on and what may come next. So let me introduce our other panelists. To my right, Professor Sylvia Lopez. Sylvia is a Spanish professor at Beloit College. She's been here since the 1990s, actively involved in supporting Latino interests. And next is an empty chair, where Cecilia Ramirez was supposed to be, but I couldn't get her to come up here. Rosamaria Laursen is on the front lines educating immigrant children for the Beloit School District, where she's the manager of the English Language Learner Dual Language Immersion Program. And at the end is Larry Arft, our retiring city manager, who was kind of at odds for things to do, so he decided he'd show up tonight. Now, Larry's going to be here for another 6 months or so. I think everybody in town knows who Larry is. He works hard, been here about 12 years, and been an outstanding city manager. So thank you, panel, and glad to have you all here. I'm going to get started by reading the statement that Mark Pocan sent, and then maybe we can get some input from the panel on what's going on in Washington and how they see the situation. From Congressman Pocan. The President used his constitutional authority to make much-needed progress on this important issue while House Republicans continue to allow our broken immigration system to fester. Congress still needs to act permanently to fix our nation's immigration laws. Speaker Boehner and congressional Republicans must come to the negotiation table to reach a comprehensive, long-lasting, and bipartisan solution. Republicans have offered no solutions, only criticisms and empty promises when it comes to immigration reform. There was a bipartisan consensus reached on a Senate immigration bill, but House Republicans refused to bring meaningful reform for debate. On the impact of the President's executive action, Congressman Pocan said there are 76,000 undocumented immigrants. Actually, the Pew Center says it's 85,000 living in Wisconsin. President Obama's executive order provides temporary protective status for up to 4 million undocumented immigrants, exempting these individuals from deportation and allowing the ability to obtain work permits. Expanding deferred action will permit undocumented immigrants to work legally and come out of the shadows. When undocumented immigrants can work legally, they are able to shield themselves against workplace exploitation and move freely across the labor market to find jobs just like anyone else. This executive order enables many of these immigrants to register with the government, request relief from removal, and apply for a temporary work permit. This is not only the right thing to do, but it will also provide a cascade of economic benefits by increasing Wisconsin's tax revenues by an estimated $18 million over 5 years. Under the plan, parents of U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents would qualify only if they have lived in the country for 5 years, beginning in January 2010. The administration stated it will be ready to begin taking applications in the spring, and those who qualify will be granted 3 years of deportation relief, meaning they would be protected through 2017. After 2017, a new administration would have to determine whether to continue the program or eliminate it. On areas he would like to see improved, Congressman said, I would have liked to see this executive action include protections for parents of dreamers, children whose parents brought them to the U.S. at a young age, and agricultural workers who are important parts of our society. Unfortunately, the President's authority to act is limited. The executive order does not include the extension of vital safety net benefits, such as health coverage or nutrition assistance. I believe Congress needs to act to provide additional relief to millions of undocumented immigrants so that they are better integrated into American society. That's Congressman Pocan's statement on conditions in Washington. Larry, would you have anything to add to that?
No, I think obviously the congressman has his finger on the pulse in the Capitol. The president's executive order obviously deals with a fairly narrow focus. It's a subgroup of the potentially total number of undocumented immigrants in the country, but it doesn't deal with other more comprehensive immigration issues like establishing some kind of a guest worker program, make it easy to get visas, to come into the country to work in the first place to eliminate the problem, which is a huge part of the immigration reform bill. Continue border security to make sure people aren't coming in inappropriately. And those issues are still outstanding. Plus, we still need some kind of a more comprehensive path to citizenship for all the undocumented immigrants that are in the United States. No serious person really believes we're going to round up 9 or 10 or 11 million people and start loading them in railroad cars or buses and driving them to the border and dumping them in the Rio Grande. That's not going to happen in the United States. At least I hope nothing like that would ever happen in our country. Plus the damage to the economy. We took that many workers out of the country at one time and did some kind of a return to Mexico or return to South America. The economy would be devastated. So regardless of what your ideology is, that's just not an option. And the only way to deal with that population is we need to make sure that there's a more comprehensive program so all of them can be documented. And there would be some kind of path to citizenship where they would get credit. This is what was in the compromise bill. You'll get credit for the years you were here, the work you've done, things like that, and then there will be some kind of path to get to citizenship. In one of the bills, you would pay a fine to, quote, compensate for the violation of our immigration laws, and then that would start your clock. And as you got to a certain level of a certain amount of years of residency in the United States, and you were working, and you obviously don't have problems with the law. If you're a felon or something, you're just not going to be allowed to stay. And I don't think I've ever heard of any of the immigration options that include that. So I think it's a big job. I hope Congress really sits down, gets serious. There's an old saying, the best politics is good government. And obviously the folks in Washington, D.C. have lost sight of that in recent years. And hopefully there will be a new start here with this new Congress coming in, and that they'll sit down and seriously look at doing some public policy work and trying to work through some of these issues. It's been a festering problem for years. Many of you remember the McCain-Kennedy bill back in it was 06, 05 vintage, and that was an excellent bill that incorporated solutions to all of the problems related to the immigration issues. And unfortunately, it got tied up in politics. Neither side liked it, and it ended up getting defeated. So there's a lot of work yet to be done. The President's executive order provides relief to a fairly substantial subgroup of the total number of undocumented immigrants in the country. So I think that's a good start, but you're going to have to do something more comprehensive. It's going to have to be done through Congress. There's no way you can do all of this by executive fiat. There's going to legislation to fix it, a more comprehensive fix for the problem.
Thanks, Larry. Sylvia, would you have anything you want to add?
So the only thing I would add at this time is I guess I see it as a family values kind of issue, and so I'd like to see extend to parents the same kind of
Rosamaria?
Well, the only thing to add to that would be just keeping things in perspective, because a lot of times we think undocumented workers, we automatically think Hispanic or Latino. And in reality, out of the 11 million people in this country that are undocumented, about 7 or 8 million are Hispanic. There are many people from Asia as well, so these protections would be helping them as well. And that's about it. And out of that, in the United States, there's 50 million Hispanic people. And then just thinking about, okay, well, we only have 7 or 8 million that are undocumented out of that group. So it's a majority-minority issue at the same time. I would say that almost every single Hispanic person that I know, and probably in the United States, knows somebody that is undocumented. So it does affect everybody in that group.
Just to add something to that, the most recent just came out in the last few days, Beloit magazine, Beloit College. The cover story is on students at Beloit College who are undocumented. I think one was Filipino, and I think one was from Eastern Europe. Right? So, no, they're not all Hispanic. The second question I'd like to address to first Manager Arft, and then we're going to ask for comments from other members of the panel. But there's not a whole lot we can do about what Washington may or may not do. So states and communities largely are on their own as they cope with changing demographics. And Beloit more than most because of our population is one of the leading cities in Wisconsin. So what, Larry, is Beloit, City of Beloit doing to try to cope with the changes or acknowledge the changes? And put another way, perhaps, are we erecting walls of separation? Are we breaking into segments of the community that don't really mix together as they should? How do we get some unity back in the community?
Well, we don't perceive walls of separation in service delivery to Beloit residents. I certainly hope the Hispanic community does not feel that they've been locked out or isolated in some way. I'll start by giving you just a few examples of how the city has stepped up to directly provide services to our Hispanic population. It ranges from funding for the State Line Literacy Council, which many of you are familiar with. It's worked with a lot of the Hispanic population with the this is a second language issue. Over the last 5 years, the city has provided $150,000 of their funding. And if you go back a decade or longer, it would be somewhere in the magnitude of $300,000 that's been provided for that one agency alone. I asked some of the department division heads to comment on the service delivery to the Hispanic population and what the issues are. Of course, none of you will be surprised to hear that the biggest one are the language differences, far more so than the cultural differences. But the language is a barrier, it's a problem. We have a lot of Hispanic-speaking employees, but probably not enough to provide all the services, and they're constantly calling in. In fact, in the police department, they actually have a calling tree that they use. So if they need to provide service delivery for someone that either can't speak English or speaks English very haltingly, they've actually got a tree of people they call until they get an interpreter to make sure that the service is provided and there's no problem. I talked to Parks and Leisure Services because this is one of our gems in the city, our beautiful park system and all the wonderful quality of life amenities that we offer through that program. And we've done, I asked them about service. They see Hispanics participating pretty much across the spectrum, renting all facilities all around the city. You've all been up to the music at Harry's on Friday night. It's always a mixed group of ethnic and racial backgrounds, lots of Hispanics attending those events. We've had regular contact with the Hispanic community. When we started getting a number of Hispanics, they asked us about soccer fields because this is something We had the youth soccer stuff, but nothing really for adult soccer. So they came in, talked to the rec people. We ended up establishing 2 new adult soccer fields, one up at Telfer Park and one at Summit. We've worked with that league, and they actually have league play there on the weekends if you ever go by, which is heavily, I'm not sure the teams are 100% Hispanic, but certainly heavily Hispanic, and those facilities were provided specifically at their request. So we're very proud of the fact that we've tried to treat all of our residents alike and be fair with everybody, provide service delivery to everyone. I can't tell you how many liquor licenses we've issued to Hispanic business owners or managers of businesses that happen to be Hispanic, how many conditional use permits have been issued, how many businesses that are owned by Hispanics that are operating in the city and operating successfully. Many of them repurposed old buildings where a former business had failed or an office had gone out and came in and bought them. We've had a lot of Hispanics that have participated in our neighborhood stabilization and restoration programs. We've sold homes to Hispanics moving into the community. We've had a number of them qualify for home improvement loans. They've basically homesteaded in some of our city center neighborhoods, buying older properties and doing the rehab, remodel, and making them homes. So we're very proud of that. We hope and pray that that continues. If any of you have a different perspective, I'd certainly like to hear it, because I can guarantee you that is not city policy. And I want to, kind of close, if I may take just another 30 seconds to talk about immigration, because again, the city of Beloit, it reads like a microcosm of the United States. This was founded by English settlers from New England back in the 1830s. They were followed shortly after that by a huge German migration in the late 40s and 1850s, large Scandinavian groups. After that were Italian and Irish coming in here to work in the factories, huge migrations. Eastern Europeans around the turn of the century. African Americans, a big influx around the World War I period, another large influx in the 1970s, and now the Hispanic population. So this is nothing new or unique in the United States, or certainly in the city of Beloit. We've had successive waves of immigration literally from the start, the beginning of the city back in the 1830s. And I will tell you, all of them came here with somewhat unique cultural values and differences, different languages and values that they had to try to integrate into the mainstream culture. And I see a lot of that in the Hispanic population. The last Hispanic police officer that we hired does not speak Spanish. Okay, he's been completely assimilated, has a college education, and you're going to see more and more of that as time goes on, as the population assimilates more into the mainstream culture. So again, if anyone has a different perspective, I'd certainly like to hear it. We don't go out of our way to patronize people. We don't do that with other ethnic groups in the community, but certainly if there's service delivery required, we treat all of the citizens of this community the same to the very best of our ability.
Very thanks. Rosamaria, Sylvia, both of you want to chime in? Your experience working with Latino families in town, trying to access to services and what they need at any time?
Well, it is a challenge. Language is a barrier, especially for our adults in the community, or heads of households and parents of the children that we have. And I mean, that's the biggest barrier. The other one is just understanding what services are out there and being able to have the city communicate what is something that they can offer to the community, and doing a good job of that.
Yeah, I'd add to that. When I arrived in 1995, I distinctly remember receiving numerous calls from community members, the Beloit Police Department, the hospitals, the clinics, calling for interpreters. And I'm happy to say that I don't receive those fancy calls anymore. And my guess is that it's because these agencies and organizations have hired individuals who are bilingual. I'd also say that Beloit's done a wonderful job in helping Latinos, those who come with no English language skills, to learn English. And so, in addition to the State Land Literacy Council, there's Even Start, a highly successful literacy program for families to participate, you need to be a parent with children. So that's been successful. But I'd also like to say that Latinos themselves have taken kind of the reins and have established some organizations. So, for instance, there's the Latino Service Providers Coalition, which has been instrumental in gathering organizations and representatives from various nonprofit organizations who serve Latinos. They meet regularly, so they meet every Tuesday, that is every first Tuesday of the month, to disseminate information that might help Latinos become better integrated and learn about what's available in Beloit. And Cecilia Ramirez, who's in the audience, is an instrumental piece to that organization because she receives numerous calls from individuals who are seeking all sorts of information. And again, she's instrumental in providing that kind of information.
Cecile, you want to say anything?
You'll have to come up to use the microphone.
You want to come up and use the microphone?
Here, he's going to bring you one.
Here we go.
Well, I mean, I would just say that I really appreciate your work, Mr. Larry. It is very obvious that the Latinos have the services and the language is a huge barrier. And I will say that is why I have my job, because it's what I do. I help the members in the community that don't speak English. And I always encourage them to get involved in the community and especially to take classes, because I did that. And I know that, I mean, I'm not trying to brag about me, but I can be an example. If we try, we can do it. And so I help with many needs for the residents and Beloit. There's many services they're always looking and you know, I have had people that will ask me like, are you a doctor? Are you a lawyer? Are you a teacher? I'm not. I'm the same every member of the community. I'm just trying to help and finding resources for them and for myself. You know, I'm a community member. So thank you for your support, and yeah, definitely we hope the immigration bill will pass.
Thank you. I'd like to pose the next question to Rosamaria. For lack of a better term, we think the school district is sort of ground zero, where you take in every child, K-12, who comes from whatever background they come from, any language barriers that may be there, any cultural learning curves. Also acknowledge Superintendent McNeil, who's here tonight. And you do a remarkable job overcoming these barriers. And I wonder if you could talk about how the school district finds a way to take all these kids from all these different backgrounds and try to make one school body out of that.
Well, we have our challenges. We do have a very diverse population in the school district of Beloit. This year we did hit the 33% mark for Latino children in the district. So we talk about a third, but it is our African American population is about 25%. Latinos are now 33% of the student population, and we have a small percentage of students from Asian countries, and then the remainder is white. Out of these students, 33% of our student body, about 2/3 of them have been what we call an English language learner. And what that means is that the students come from homes where Spanish is the primary language spoken. So when they come to school, they don't necessarily know a lot of English. They may know some. So because of the laws that are in place, we are required to educate them or provide them services in the form of bilingual teacher or an English as a second language teacher who is bilingual. So we do have a couple of programs in our district to help the students achieve that. So 2,300 students, about 1,600 of them at one point had been or still is an English learner. 1,100 of them are still in our program. The first program, when I first came to the school district 5 years ago, the program we had in place was English as a second language. And in the state of Wisconsin, the law requires us to teach the students English via a bilingual teacher, because we are a bilingual state. That's what we're called. And so basically, we would provide these services to the students in their school. At first, we had center schools where the students would bus to certain schools where they could receive these services. And over the last few years, we have been able to increase those services. So every single school in our district, except for one of them, does have access. The students do have access to a teacher that is able to teach them English as a second language. This is our third year so 2 years ago we began offering a program called dual language immersion. And what it is that we teach a group of students. Half of this, we try to keep a good balance. So half of our students in this program are students that come from Spanish-speaking homes. The other half are students that come from English-speaking homes. And we put them together in the class, and they spend half of their day learning in Spanish, and the other half learning in English. We started that at kindergarten at 2 of our schools, at Hackett, which has our highest population of students that are Spanish-speaking, and at Robinson, which was also another school that had a high population of Spanish speakers. The beginning of last school year, we added Todd's school because there was a great interest and because our population had been increasing at that school as well. So now we have 3 schools, 3 out of our 6 primary pre-K through 3rd grade has this program. And the parents are extremely happy with it. We have about, last year we had like a 99% approval rating, I suppose. So the parents are very happy with this program because it gives their children an opportunity to learn 2 languages. Most of the students, almost 60% of the students that are in this program are Hispanic. But not all of them come from Spanish-speaking homes. A lot of families are interested in maintaining the language because they understand that it's very important to have both languages. We also, at the high school, about 3 years ago, one of our Spanish teachers took it upon herself to start a class called Spanish for Spanish Speakers. And the reason she started this is because she saw a need to give the students that already had oral language in Spanish, they needed something different. They didn't need to necessarily learn the grammar or how to conjugate verbs or anything like that. It was more they needed to learn how to read and write in their own language. So she saw that this was an opportunity to teach them to read and write, and she started with 1 class. She's up to 3 courses, Spanish for Spanish Speakers 1, 2, and 3, and it is a pathway to the AP Spanish class. So the students, once they complete these courses, they are ready to go into the advanced placement course, which could earn them college credits. So that's pretty exciting as well. And like Sylvia had alluded to earlier, there is the Even Start program, which is a program that is for parents and their children up through age 4. So they have a 4K in that program as well. And the families, they learn English. Some of them are taking GED classes, and they also have have courses to give the parents more parenting skills and family skills.
Sylvia, would you like to add anything? Okay, Larry?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, next question. Now you do. Go ahead. See, I told you you should be sitting up here. Yes.
We had privilege as a Latinos to that our students they have been in even start now they're in the National Honor Society, and then the soccer players. I always say, in order to be in a team, it's not because you have to be a good player, you have to be a good student. And I'm assuming that these are excellent students. They almost get to the stage. So the Latinos are participating and are having good grades in school too.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to, Cecilia was invited to be on the panel. We're going to open for some questions when we get done with the panel, if that's okay. All right, thank you. I want to address the next question to Sylvia. In 2011, the Wisconsin state government rescinded its policy that had allowed Latinos to, or immigrants to pay in-state tuition. Once you get past K-12, then you're looking at higher education, career path, and then it's not easy. Beloit College, one of the things Beloit College is becoming known for is that it makes no distinction between domestic students and undocumented immigrant students. And Sylvia, I wonder if you could address when kids get out of high school and they're looking to go forward on a career path and pursue higher education, how do they get there?
Well, I'd say it starts way before high school. If you are on a college career path, then it starts early. Students need to be prepared. And I would encourage, families to work with students, teachers, administrators, and counselors to make sure that students leave all doors open. And if I can talk not just about the undocumented, but all children in general, right? It's a question of being well prepared, so instilling in our children from an early age a love of learning, a love of reading, a love of writing. It also means encouraging students to do their best and to enroll in AP courses and honors courses that are going to prepare them well for college. And then it's a question of making sure that families understand the college process. So admissions and what that all entails. It also means understanding the differences between public schools and private schools. And these are some of the topics that, in particular, some Latino families struggle with, understanding those differences. Also understanding cost, right? So the difference between in-state tuition, out-of-state tuition, and then the differences between, again, the public and private. And then there's the question of financial aid and understanding that college isn't necessarily out of grasp, regardless of whether you're documented or undocumented. There are opportunities for students to qualify for scholarships that don't require that you be either a citizen. So in other words, you don't have to rely just on state and federal aid. There are particular scholarships, and there are organizations out there that list them. So it's a question of education. It's a question of working with both students and families to educate them so that they understand what the opportunities are.
Rosamaria, maybe you have some thoughts on how Beloit School District helps counsel young people who want to go on to college, and how they can perhaps make it a little more reachable.
Well, as far as the school district of Beloit, what it really comes down to is educating the parents. Our schools do a great job of reaching out to parents and giving them information so they're more involved in school. And that's done through the classroom teachers and our bilingual teachers and our English as a second language teachers. So when the parents know what's available to their children and they're made aware of what the process is, they're more likely to encourage their children to go ahead and seek out information or be able to apply for college, those sorts of things. The other thing is helping children feel comfortable, because what happens is that students, they're very social. Children are very social. So when their friends are not going on to these higher courses, it's difficult for them to kind of be the only person in an AP course. Because of our Spanish for Spanish speakers and other teachers that are encouraging their students to go into AP courses, the students are feeling more and more comfortable in these courses as well. So it does come down to involving the families and teaching them what our school system is like, what resources are out there for their students. And once that happens, involving the families in that way, then the likelihood of the students going on to higher education is a lot higher.
And we know that our Latino families are very interested in this topic. So some years ago, Dina Nibs, and some of you may be familiar with her, a community member, helped organize a session in which we educated Latino families about the admissions process and career paths. And then more recently, students from Beloit, so Latino students from Beloit, organized and offered a series of sessions to Latino families who, again, were seeking this information, right? They wanted to know more about the admissions process. They wanted to know more about financial aid. And again, some basic things like the differences between public and private schools and how their children can access. So Latinos in our community are very interested in education, are very interested in creating opportunities for their students to go on and get a college career.
Larry, anything you want to add?
Well, I just want to comment. I think there are tremendous opportunities, and there are scholarships and other programs that people can use to get to college. I would hope everyone, regardless of your particular ethnicity, understands that in the United States, the path to success is still getting a good education. I was the first generation in my family to go to college. We've been here since the 1850s, and none of the prior generations had ever really thought that they would get to college. Most of them never even went to high school. So it is clearly the pathway. And I would urge people not to be overly concerned about assimilation. Just because your children or grandchildren move on to higher education, it doesn't mean they're going to lose all the values or all the ties to their ethnic culture. But certainly they will assimilate, and it gives them a much better opportunity to assimilate economically. It also gives your children and grandchildren opportunities to really contribute at a high level as a manager or in the professions to what goes on in society, and offers them different types of job opportunities, often doing things, again, at the professional level, which are much more fulfilling, provide a much more exciting and interesting life than just doing factory work or some kind of manual labor. So I would urge everyone to contemplate that and get an opportunity to encourage your children or grandchildren, as long as they've got the capability, to encourage them to keep going with their education.
Yeah, and if I can add, I think it would be wonderful if we would reconsider the in-state tuition for undocumented students. So my understanding is that per term it's about $5,000 to attend the University of Madison. For out-of-state, it would be almost, certainly over double the amount. And so over a 4-year career, that the differences can amount to about $65,000. So that's quite significant. And I think what we want to do is, given that all children in this country are allowed and should attend and must attend school, K through 12 in particular, we spend a lot of money, right, for these kids to get an education. It's unfortunate that we then close the door for undocumented students when we put a college education out of reach because they can't afford it. I hope we can do something about that.
I want to say probably the statistic or the phrase that I've heard tonight that has the most bearing for me was the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, approximately in the school district that says, sort of explains why we did what we did with the series, that this is who we are, this is our young people, this is the Beloit of tomorrow and today. And yet, by doing what we did, we triggered a lot of feedback, and that probably won't surprise anybody. And I have heard everything ranging from being told that this is the best thing the Beloit Daily News has ever done, to being told that we need to stand up for America and cancel my subscription. So we've had the full gamut of response, from very positive to very negative, which suggests that part of what we're dealing with here, aside from policies in Washington, policies in City Hall, policies and programs in the school district, is that phrase, hearts and minds, that we're dealing with people's reactions, their hearts, their minds, and whether they're open or closed to what's going on. And I say that without judgment, that people just are what they are. But how do you cope with that? How do you make changes in hearts and minds? Larry, you want to tackle that one?
Well, obviously there's hard feelings out there in many sectors of our country. Clearly, a lot of people do not like the thought that the border is open, that people can come in undocumented, come in illegally. You hear concerns expressed all the time about who all is coming in, and although there's been very few cases of any terrorists coming into the country or anything like that going on, there's still apprehension about it. Also, you have to understand this is not the first time when we've had a large-scale migration into the United States when it created a backlash. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Know Nothing Party, but back in the early mid part of the 19th century, this was a pretty significant political movement, and they were reacting to the volume of immigration, and that's one of the problems without having some reasonable immigration laws to manage this migration, is that you have a sudden influx, a large number. And that certainly happened with the Hispanic population over the last 30 years. And certainly that's going to create some pushback and some fear among nativists that their culture, that their society is going to be changed in a way that they don't like. So I think as time goes on, you'll see more and more acceptance. Hispanics have been doing a good job of assimilating into the culture. They hold a lot of jobs at all levels in the economy. They're not just manual laborers anymore, as the ladies here at the table can attest. And I think you'll see that acceptance. That's what's always happened before. But right now, there's still pushback from people that feel that this is a large invasion, if you will, a cultural invasion, and that they're fearful that their traditional culture and values are going to be in some way degraded or damaged as a result of it.
Rosamaria, hearts and minds.
Well, it just really comes down to, people are most influenced by the I know someone who mentality. You know, if you know somebody who is a certain way or does certain things, that's what really changes people's minds. You know, I could throw statistics at you all day, but unless you actually know somebody who is in a certain category or changes your mind about what you thought a person was like, or a group of people are like, that's a big change in aging, I guess.
Sylvia?
I would say that, you know, part of it is intellectual and understanding our history, understanding that patterns of migration into this country. The vast majority of Latinos in Beloit are of Mexican descent, and so understanding that Mexicans have been citizens of this country since 1848, and
they come in waves. We've had a push-pull kind of experience with Mexicans in particular, right? So when our economy is good and we need workers, we pull them in. And then when the economy is not doing so well, we want to push them out. And this has happened before, and unfortunately, it's what we're experiencing right now. But when it comes to Hearts in particular, as I think Rosamaria is saying, I think it's important for us to reach out and try to get to know people on an individual basis, on a one-to-one basis. I really think that's the way for us to change hearts and minds. Getting together and creating opportunities for us to talk and exchange ideas, and to learn from one another and understand that we're all human beings and that we all have very similar aspirations, right? And so the vast majority of the families you talk to here who have come from elsewhere will tell you that they come for opportunities, and not just for themselves, but for their kids. And isn't that what we all want, all of us who have children, right? A better future for our children.
Thank you. Last question, then we're going to open it up to the audience in case anybody wants to talk about something. But one of the reasons that we tackled what we did is came from this thought that institutions need to take some leadership. And I guess for lack of a better term, we're the press institution in town. And so we wanted to bring this topic to the forefront and encourage a community conversation. We have institutions at Beloit College, School District of Beloit, City Hall. I'm sure there are lots of folks here in business, the business community. Are the institutions in the community doing enough to try to encourage this kind of conversation and move us forward? Who'd like to tackle that?
Well, I guess I should start representing the municipal government. I think that's a good question. The conversation, of course, is always a two-way street. The language differential with this current migration has made it more difficult to communicate on a more collegial basis, on a regular basis. But it's happening. We made accommodations. The Hispanic people are moving in to the country, I think, have made accommodations because they've really worked hard to develop English language skills, and they understand how important that is to their children in terms of getting an education and being successful in the United States. I think one of the reasons the United States is such a special place is there is no foregone conclusion here. If you entered this country illegally and you're working here being productive, you have children. Those children can not only go to college, they can go to medical school. There's no caste system here. There's no automatic ceiling on where you belong in American society. So if you came over here to be a farm laborer or to mow lawns for a landscaper or some really menial type work, it doesn't mean that you and your future generations are locked into that level. So the land of opportunity is not a slogan. That's what the United States is all about. I would urge all of you to pursue it. I think you'll find as time goes on some of these anti-immigration feelings that are articulated by individuals and unfortunately occasionally by governing boards, and certainly any effort to suppress educational opportunities is a terrible, terrible mistake. And I would certainly urge legislative bodies at all levels of government to do everything they can to encourage that kind of participation, make those opportunities available. So I don't know if I've answered your question. Clearly, the size and scale of the Hispanic immigration into the United States and the way it was done, often entering the country illegally, has created more tensions than we've seen since the 1830s or so with the Know Nothing Party. And by the way, they didn't like the Irish or German Catholic immigrants who were coming into the United States. They were sure we were going to ruin the entire place. So don't feel alone. Not the first time people have been through it, but stay the course. Things are getting better. I don't feel, and again, maybe I'm isolated, but I'm out and about in the community all the time. I don't feel a lot of tension in the community. I hope, and with regard to all the racial groups as well as ethnic various ethnicities. And I certainly hope that that continues and people feel comfortable here and feel like this is a place where they can live comfortably and participate in all the wonderful special events and activities that we have here in the city of Beloit, and a place where their kids can grow up and hopefully, again, do the very best they can do and take themselves to the limits of their ability.
Sylvia, are institutions in town doing enough to encourage this?
Let me talk a little bit about Beloit. I mean, I think through its admissions process, right, Beloit College is certainly trying to diversify its student body, and so one of the things that they've recently done is done away with the SAT and ACT exam scores, because we know that these standardized exams are not indicative of just how well students are going to perform. At the curricular level, we've also taken some steps to encourage students to get out and involved in the community. And I can speak for my students and say that they indeed have and engage in all sorts of organizations, but in particular, because of my training in language, they get involved in Even Start or the State Literacy Council. So Beloit College itself, I think, is doing what it can. Other institutions, boy, I think our audience members can probably speak better to what exactly they're doing to unify us, right, to bring us all together.
Rosamaria, you want to add?
Well, the school district of Beloit has done a lot in the past. Looking back at history, when we had a huge influx of students, it was about the year 2000 is when the English as a Second Language program was officially started. It had been in place prior to that, but that's, looking back at what my predecessors had left me as far as data, that's kind of like the turning point year. And through the years, it does take time. People sometimes they want to see from one day to the next a complete shift to be able to meet everybody's needs. But it is a challenge. It does take time. And if you look at things from where they are in 5-year increments, you do see a big change moving towards providing the services that our students need and deserve. As far as the field of education, we have many things that well-meaning government officials that will impose laws and requirements for our students, and things ranging from state exams that really are exams of language until the students have the same proficiency as native English speakers. So, the tests really aren't measuring their true academic skills. It's measuring how much English they know. That's one challenge that we have. Other challenges that we have is, like other organizations and other institutions, is finding enough bilingual people to work in our district has been a challenge as well. And, just meeting halfway. Our families are very interested in being a part of knowing what our students are learning and how they can help them. But on the other side, our teachers and our administrators are helping them understand, well, how do we get this information to the families in a way that's very friendly and encouraging. So.
Thank you. Can we get a microphone out into the crowd? This gentleman has been very patient, so thank you for that. And you're up. If you want to address the question to a specific person on the panel or whatever.
I just actually wanted to tell a little bit about my experience in my unique situation living here in Beloit and having worked and now working on the other side of the state line, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
My name is Walter James, and I live here in Beloit, and I have 3 kids in the school district of Beloit, and we're having a fantastic experience. And Mr. Barth, and thank you to all the panels for being here. And I have renewed my subscription. That was a great series that you ran. So, the plight of undocumented students is something that I study and I take to heart. As we know, these kids have come to this country many of them at the ages of 3 to 5 years old. So these kids have, if they started in the Beloit system at that age, they've been here pre-K, K-12, and they consider themselves Americans. So, they've come here out of no fault of their own, yet being undocumented puts a stress on their lives, everyday lives, that is very, very difficult for them to manage. And they do consider themselves Americans. By the time that they finish 12th grade, we will have invested over $100,000 in their education, and that's quite an amount of money for undocumented students. And then to turn around in Wisconsin and not be able to go to junior college or college at in-state tuition rates, and they do live in state; they're here. And so that's really, really difficult. And I'm now the bilingual director in the Harlem schools, which is just 20 minutes down the road. And Illinois is one of the states where the kids can pay in-state tuition and go to college. So that financial barrier to these kids is insurmountable in many, many cases, especially from the humble beginnings that they come from. And I've been going to a lot of the Transform Rockford meetings, and there's a lot of jobs opening up in the area. And at the Rockford Airport, they're building a hangar where a company is going to be fixing airplanes. And they are recruiting actively. They have 500 positions open, and they are enticing high school kids to go to Rock Valley College to get a 2-year degree in aviation. And their starting jobs will be $50,000 a year after 2 years at Rock Valley College. And as a person on the state line and just so happy with Beloit, I want the best for these undocumented students, and I want them to go to school, to higher education, wherever they can. So it is just in the best interest of our state and in the city of Beloit that they be able to go to school for in-state tuition, that more scholarships become available to them, and also in financial aid. I mean, it just means so much, because the big businesses are worried about an educated workforce, and they want to know if the area, if we're ready to produce the workers that they need. And my kids go here in the school district of Beloit, and I want them to go to school with dreams. I don't want them to be shoulder to shoulder with kids who don't have the same opportunities as they do. I want the kids, the Latino kids that they're going to school with, their friends, our neighbors, to have the same opportunities. And it's really tough also to hold educators when kids don't have the same opportunities after high school. We're all held accountable for test scores. But the kids need to have the same opportunities as their peers so that we can help them be successful. Because a part of living in the shadows is they live in the shadows in our schools, and they don't come forth with the truth about why they're not putting forth the effort. A lot of them are not putting forth the effort because they're undocumented. And they're not going to say it. They don't have a driver's license, they take the bus, they're working under the counter. So it is really important that we really send the message to our government that in-state tuition is fundamental for the health of our city.
Thank you. We up front here, there's someone else.
I just want to make one more comment. We were talking about what the schools can do. The role of the middle school counselors and the high school counselors is absolutely crucial in helping these kids navigate middle school when they're finding out younger and younger now that they're undocumented, and all the way up through high school to help them navigate the system to get into college. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Up front here.
So I have a specific case for how tuition affected one of my friends. He used to be very brilliant. Well, he's very brilliant. He went to UROC for a year. He was getting very good grades, but then the tuition changed. He couldn't finish college. He had to drop it. So that's how it affects people who are very brilliant, who are wishing to get a better education, but they can't because they cannot pay the same tuition as any other resident could pay. They're not asking for scholarships. They're just asking for financial aid. They're just asking to have the same price as anyone else in the state, since they also live here. So scholarships, on the other hand, are very difficult to get. even for citizens, even for residents, legal residents. So that's not really a true choice for many undocumented students. So
By the way, if anyone wants to jump in and comment, go right ahead.
Well, there's a myth out there that undocumented people don't pay taxes, when in reality, a lot of our undocumented people get ITINs, which is basically a tax ID number, so they can pay taxes. And so when a family is paying taxes in the state of Wisconsin and then is not allowed the same benefit as any other Wisconsin taxpayer to be able to pay the in-state tuition, which is the reason why we pay in-state tuition, that to me is very unfair, especially for children in many cases who have been here since they were babies. And many of them, will say, well, why can't you just go back to your home country and go to college? It's not that easy, especially if the children had not been taught in their first language. They don't have the same academic language as any other child in their home country. So that, that in all sense of the word, I mean, these children are really American.
I would agree. Even looking at it again from the other side of the fence, by far in the best interest of America at large and the mainstream population to be sure that new immigrants are educated and acculturated. To do anything to put an impediment in that path is a huge mistake for our country. We don't want to balkanize the United States. As new immigrants come into the country, however they got here, it's in our best interest to be sure they have an opportunity to get an education, be able to work and support themselves and their families, and be able to assimilate into the mainstream culture. So it's one of those kind of knee-jerk reactions that we were talking about earlier this evening that in this case, this one's had very, very unfortunate ramifications.
Yeah, in-state tuition, bringing that back would certainly serve as an incentive for students in high school, not only to excel, but to persist and graduate. So again, another reason for why we need it.
Do we have anything else on that? Anyone else want to say? Yes, in the back.
I think one thing that gets overlooked in this, with the heat of the debate over, are we going to allow undocumented workers here? Are we going to kick them out? Things like that. There's a lot of people tend to forget that these are people. We throw labels like illegal alien and things like that around like it's nothing. But these are people. We're throwing these words out to try and dehumanize these individuals in a given situation. And I'm fortunate enough I teach here in the school district, and I get to interact with these children on a daily basis. And I get to see how these horrible things that people spit back and forth affect them. Words have power. And when we're sitting here saying, because you came here when you were 5 months old, you can't have the same benefit as the kid sitting in the chair next to you. These kids see that. They hear this. And what kind of example do we set as adults when we're saying 5 months is the difference between whether or not we think you're worth this and this person is? And I think we really need to try not to separate ourselves from the fact that these are kids. These are individuals. These are adults. They came here for the same reasons that I get up every morning and go to my job, to make a better life for their kids and the kids around them. And we just really need to hold on to that.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, here's that.
There were statistics that were given about our schools, what city services are being done, what Beloit College is being done. I'm more concerned about financial institutions. American dream is not only a job, it's home ownership. Are there percentages out there about Latinos in our community that are homeowners? Are there percentages out there about Latinos that are participating in financial institutions? Is there any type of determination about how much is cash economy? So I'll leave it at that for your comment.
I can respond to that a bit. I don't know that I have any hard statistics, or quite frankly, that any of them are available. There may be some data in some of the census records going back to 2000. But I can tell you definitively there are a great many Hispanic families that own their homes in Beloit. We've sold homes that the city had that we redid to Hispanic families. We've had a number of them, again, homesteading in some of our older city center neighborhoods and buying homes that were either partially redone, or in some cases they were like tax foreclosure properties. They picked them up cheap, and then they were putting a lot of sweat equity in rebuilding the properties. I can also tell you around the city that we have a huge number of Hispanic-owned businesses, and we've issued a lot of liquor licenses. Those people, and I can't tell you in every case whether they own the building. In some cases, I know they bought the building and then started the business in it. In other cases, they may be leasing, but they've got pretty significant property rights in the community, and they've made a real investment here and settled in, and they're contributing very much to the local economy here in the city of Beloit.
Anything you want to add? No? Okay. Are there any other questions or comments in the audience? Yes, Cecilia.
But I want to add, I mean, I don't have numbers, but I would say years ago, it was very easy to buy a house, even with the undocumented members in the community. But about 5 years ago, the banks are not giving loans to the people that don't have a social security number. The ID number is not working for the kind of institutions. Now you have to be a citizen or have a social security number in order to buy a house. And the same way, in Wisconsin, the driver license have been terminated. There's no driver license for the undocumented people. So what's happening here is people still driving. They're paying a lot of fines. They're paying a lot of tickets. They're paying more for insurance. And talking about taxes, yeah, people still working. They pay taxes, and they pay more than the citizens. Like if you do your estate taxes, the state of Wisconsin do not return the property taxes to the undocumented people because they don't have a social security number. They just receive a letter, and they said, because you don't have a social security number, we will not return your property taxes. So they still paying taxes, but they're not receiving their refunds. And they're contributing, the undocumented people is contributing with schools, churches, business. They buy their food, they buy their clothes, they pay their cars and houses, but they're not receiving what the citizens are receiving. And they're still paying the same as the citizens are paying. So,
Anybody else? Going once. Yes, over here with the lady in front.
I really like what Cecilia said. And I guess my question is, as a whole, the panel was for United the Community, am I correct? So with the different issues that are out there for undocumented people and all the institutions that want to help, what can be created to let the people feel like, okay, they are helping us, they want to do this? How can it be created publicly or even privately to make them feel that the fear of going out there and doing what the best that they can do can be accomplished for an adult and for a child? Mm-hmm. That's my question.
Okay, good question. I think one of the things that we noticed that some of the empty chairs, a lot of the empty chairs are empty tonight because of the weather. But also, we're speaking in English tonight. We could have gone bilingual, but we were able to see that we probably didn't need to. And part of that may be because folks are afraid to come out. I don't know that, just conjecture, but that may be part of it. In terms of, why we did the series that we did was to address what you're talking about, to get this conversation going and get people to start thinking more about how we can persuade individuals that they can step forward in our community, perhaps a little less fearful than they might have before. Panelists, would you like to address the question?
Well, I think fear is a genuine thing among the undocumented. I've participated in a variety of activities that in large part are designed for Latinos, and we don't get a huge participation rate in large part because some of them are undocumented and they're afraid to congregate. A few years past, undocumented Latinos in Beloit were afraid of what the police were doing with ICE, so they were afraid that the police were working with ICE and would detain persons. So if they gather together, again, they fear that someone may be watching and someone's going to be around waiting to detain them and deport them. So doing something public, I think, would be very hard unless you have won the trust of these individuals.
It does come down to relationships. A lot of our teachers, our bilingual teachers in the schools and school counselors, the schools where I get invited to a lot of the events that happen around in our school district, and the schools where the teachers have made a concerted effort to form relationships with the parents and really I have one teacher who gives her cell phone number out to all of her families, and they're calling her at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. She doesn't mind because she knows that she has been for years the point of contact in that building. There are other schools that do the same thing, where the teachers have that, they do put forth quite a bit of an effort to be that point of contact for the families. And so those schools where that has been happening, when I go to their events, you see hundreds of people there, a couple hundred at least. And then in schools where that might not be the case, not as many Latino families come to the school events. So it does make a huge difference on building that trust with people and that for them to feel comfortable to come to different events or different information sessions that you have.
And that's probably, again, going to take a little more comprehensive immigration reform approach. So there's a comprehensive pathway to citizenship program that would allow all people that are in the country now that are undocumented to step forward and become a part of whatever that system is that's set up. In the meantime, I don't blame undocumented folks for having some apprehension. We do not do immigration enforcement as a general rule in the city. We've had a couple cases where we did, where the immigration authorities came into the community, they asked for support, and they will receive support from the city. We get support all the time from state and federal authorities on any number of criminal matters and investigatory strategies. And so if they come and they ask for specific help in a specific case, we'll give it. But the city police are not interested in immigration enforcement. That's not our job. We have to maintain rapport with our citizens. We don't want people to be afraid of the city police. If they're the victim of a crime, if they have an accident with their car, something like that, we want them to feel comfortable to step up and be able to talk to the local police. So you won't see us doing general immigration enforcement, trying to alienate that population.
Okay, I'm going to ask, is there anyone else who had a first question before we come back over here? Is there anyone else? Okay, briefly, you got it again.
I know that 5 years ago that the Latinos take their education very seriously, and in 7th grade they had outperformed the other subgroups that we have in the city in 7th grade in mathematics and reading on the state tests. And I was wondering, Rosamaria, if you could shed some light on some successes that the Latinos are having in the Beloit schools from your perspective.
Well, a couple of things happened, I guess. We're changing our state test, so it's now going to be online, and it's in the spring now, not in the fall anymore. When I look at my statistics, I look at it primarily for our English learners. And I've looked at some, once the students gain a certain level of academic language, they no longer need services, so we exit them from the program. And that's one of my projects that I do, is I look and see what happens to the students once they exit our program. And they continue to outperform our other students. They are at or above grade level, just for a couple of reasons. One is that the language test is very rigorous. A lot of our native English speakers probably wouldn't pass it. A lot of them would, but some of them might not. There's a really high correlation between academic language abilities and test scores. So for our students, and that's why I had said earlier that for our students that didn't have academic language yet, the state test really is a language test, because if you can't really read the test, it's really hard for you to perform well. But once you do get that academic language, they do outperform the other subjects.
Anybody else? Yeah, make a plug. I'm going to.
I'd like to make a plug for the State Line Literacy Council. So for those of you who are looking to meet and interact with local Latinos, it's a wonderful place to do so. They're always looking for tutors. The wonderful thing about the State Line Literacy Council is that it continues to expand. So again, when I first arrived in Beloit, it was largely ESL classes, but they've now expanded so that they offer GED classes. They also offer citizenship classes. They offer computer classes. So if you have any inclination to help out with any of these areas, I would encourage you to call the State Line Literacy Council and ask to tutor a Latino.
Okay. We have one more.
So this year, I was actually a GED teacher for the State Literacy Council, and I can account for my students because they are people who are so studious that it's just wonderful. Like, there are people who work for 12 hours and still they're very happy to go to school and learn. It's amazing. So I would encourage you to, I don't know, share with those people because you'll be surprised. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank our panelists tonight. Larry Arft, City Manager. Rosamaria Laursen from the Beloit School District. Professor Sylvia Lopez from Beloit College. And Cecilia Ramirez was a little bit shy. I couldn't get her up here, but let's thank Cecilia as well.
Good job.
I'd like to, the plug I'm going to put in, once again, at BeloitDailyNews.com, you can find the entire series that we produced. You can find it in English. You can find it in Spanish. So I hope that all of you read it. I hope you encourage your friends to read it. Again, it's in English and Spanish. All you got to do is find it and click on it. I also want to mention that we're going to have the camera here, obviously, is a dead giveaway, but this was filmed by Beloit Cable Access. It will be available on their network. When we find out exactly the times that will be, we'll publicize it in the newspaper so people can find it. I want to thank Father John Hedrick. Father, stand up. So graciously providing the space here at St. Thomas the Apostle Catholic Church. It was a wonderful venue for the evening, and I hope you all appreciated it. On behalf of the Beloit Daily News, I want to thank our partners from Beloit Cable Access, Keith Urban over here, and yes, that is his name. He plays guitar now and then, I'm sure, on the side. Remember, this is about people. This is about our community. We hear all of the politics and Republicans, even Mark Pocan's statement, and, Mark's a good guy. I've known him a long time now. But it's a little bit of, the Republicans this and the Democrats that, and, someday are we ever going to get past some of that and deal with our community, deal with this as people. Everybody is here for a reason. We're all trying to do our best. And I think that changing hearts and minds with that question, it's an individual thing, and we all have to deal with that in our own way. But that's why we did the series. It's why we asked the panel to come together. It's why we asked for an audience to come out and share this with us. Thank you all for coming out on such a terrible, terrible night. We certainly were not anticipating that. But in closing, on behalf of the Beloit Daily News, thank you. Good night. Please drive carefully.